Coming up in our newscast tonight. After reviewing ways to reform the scandal-ridden Defense Security Command, the government takes drastic measures. The man who was in charge of the intel unit is fired, and an entire new entity will be formed to replace the DSC. Seoul's foreign minister is in Singapore for a gathering of more than 24 top diplomats. There for the ARF, Minister Kang managed to sit down with FMs from member nations of the six-party denuclearization talks. South Korea's current account surplus is rebounding well, leaving behind concerning digits recorded earlier in the year. Oil prices and drop in tourists were the key culprits back then. NEWSCENTER begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang NEWSCENTER. Good to have you with us. I'm Daniel Choi. Once again, we begin with the fate of the Defense Security Command. It's been embroiled in scandal after plans were revealed for the possible imposition of martial law last year. President Moon fired the general in charge of operations there and ordered the military intel unit to be replaced by a brand new command. Hwang Ho-jun has our top story.
Time's up for the scandal-ridden military intelligence unit.
For comprehensive and swift reform, President Moon ordered the creation of a new command by disbanding and reorganizing the current Defense Security Command to break clearly from its past.
And as a first step, the South Korean president fired the unit's commander, Lieutenant General Lee Seok-gu, and appointed the chief of Special Warfare Command, Lieutenant General Nam Yong-shin, to lead the DSC's reform. President Moon Jae-in's order to completely rebuild the intel unit came Friday afternoon, a day after the ad hoc committee to reform the defense intelligence proposed abolishing all the legal underpinnings for the DSC and slashing its personnel by 30%, virtually liquidating it. According to President Moon's press secretary Yoon Young-chan, President Moon reviewed the proposal in its entirety on Thursday. He also called for a new body to be formed that will prepare for the establishment of the as-yet unnamed new command and draw up the necessary presidential decrees. The Blue House's announcement follows a public outcry over the DSC's alleged involvement in politics, especially after a dossier was made public last month, revealing that the DSC reviewed the possibility of imposing martial law last year to quell protests demanding the impeachment of then-President Park Geun-hye. To right the wrongs of the Defense Security Command, South Korea's commander-in-chief ordered all the accused DSC officers back to their original units. He also called for the appointment of a non-military inspector to thoroughly investigate any violations of the law at the DSC, and if any are found, for the new commander to act accordingly. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Key players surrounding issues on the Korean peninsula, including top diplomats from Pyongyang and Washington, arrived in Singapore for the ASEAN foreign ministers' meeting. And ahead of the main event, the FMs were busy holding bilateral talks. Among them, North Korea's Ri Yong-ho. Our Lee Ji-won is in the city-state. She joins us on the line right now. Ji-won, unlike last year, the regime appears to be in a different position.
Daniel, North Korea's foreign minister Ri Yong-ho arrived in Singapore early this morning, and after some rest, he's known to have had meetings with China, Indonesia, Thailand, India, and Vietnam in the afternoon. And yes, like you said, countries seem to be more open and positive in meeting with the North this year, likely due to Pyongyang's claims and politicized gestures showing its willingness to denuclearize. Vietnam allegedly welcomed the positive progress in the Korean peninsula and expressed hopes that this momentum for dialogue continues. Now, while the specifics of what was discussed between Lee and its counterparts have not been revealed, Lee allegedly reaffirmed Pyongyang's commitment to denuclearize and emphasized hopes to develop relations with the countries to new levels in the future. And while South Korea expressed willingness to meet with the North, Seoul's officials say Pyongyang has not yet given a response.
Now, Mike Pompeo also arrived there today. He is highly in demand, probably barely had time to unpack as soon as he landed.
Yes, Secretary Pompeo, too, had a busy day with a series of bilateral talks with ASEAN foreign ministers on Friday. Pompeo also sat down with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and we're guessing that they discussed the increasingly bitter trade war between Washington and Beijing, as well as North Korea's denuclearization. Pompeo told reporters on his way to Singapore that he will emphasize enforcing sanctions on North Korea during his meetings in the city-state, as, quote, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is not acting consistently on his commitment to denuclearize. He also said that there is still a long way until the North's nukes are all eliminated and that the regime still remains in violation of numerous Security Council resolutions. Meanwhile, Reuters reported that Chinese Foreign Minister said Friday that he hopes the U.S. can respond to North Korea's legitimate request, sparking even more tension. While many had been curious if Pyongyang and Washington will meet this week, no official announcement has been made by either side. But Pompeo will be meeting with South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa Saturday morning. An interesting thing to note is that all key players surrounding the geopolitical situation on the Korean peninsula, namely the two Koreas, the U.S. and China, will all gather in just a moment as Singapore hosts a gala dinner for the participants of this year's forum. That's all from me for now, Daniel.
It will be an interesting sight. Thank you for those updates, Ji-won. We appreciate it. Officials from one of South Korea's top conglomerates crossed the border to visit Mount Kumgang today to commemorate Hyundai Asan's late former chair. Among them was his wife, who still works for the company. She expressed hopes of resuming the stalled tours before the year is up. Oh Jung-hee has the full story.
North Korea wants to resume South Korean tours to Mount Kumgang within this year. That's according to Hyun Jung-eun, the chairwoman of Hyundai Group, who took a day-long trip Friday to the North's Mount Kumgang. The trip was to pay tribute to her late husband, the former chairman of Hyundai Asan, Chung Mong-hun, who worked extensively on inter-Korean projects in the early 2000s. Hyun said about 20 North Korean officials attended the ceremony to commemorate him, and they told her that North Korea still believes firmly in Hyundai and will cooperate if the company again takes the lead in inter-Korean projects. Hyun said she hopes to resume South Korean tours to Mount Kumgang within this year, and the North Koreans felt the same about it. Hyundai Asan spearheaded both the tours to Mount Kumgang and the inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex, but South Korean tours to North Korea's Mount Kumgang stopped after a South Korean tourist was shot dead in 2008, and the Kaesong Factory Park was shut down in February 2016 after North Korea conducted its fourth nuclear test. Remarking on Hyundai's visit, Pyongyang's external propaganda website 우리민족끼리 emphasized that North Korea formed a special relationship with Hyundai much earlier than it did with the Seoul government. It also praised Hyundai for making the difficult decision in the past to run tours to Mount Kumgang, which is located near the heavily militarized inter-Korean border. Pyongyang has in recent days urged South Korea to resume such tours through a series of reports in its state-run newspaper 노동 신문, even calling on Seoul to break away from international sanctions. North Korea is in a diplomatic push for the Mount Kumgang tours to be resumed, but the South Korean government remains firm. Seoul's Unification Ministry says its hope to resume the tours remains the same, but they can only restart once the international sanctions on North Korea are lifted completely. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Tomorrow will be the 100th day since the historic meeting between President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The nation's top office looked back at the achievements made to implement the Panmunjom Declaration thus far. Park Hyo-jun shares with us Chung Hwa-dae's evaluation.
Saturday will mark 100 days since the Panmunjom Declaration was adopted by the two Koreas at the historic summit on April 27th. In a press release Friday, South Korea's presidential office looked at how much progress has been made since then to implement it. The Panmunjom Declaration aims to improve inter-Korean relations. Since it was adopted, South Korea has pushed for inter-Korean cooperation to be enhanced in various fields, including railways, highways, forestry, and sports, through a series of bilateral discussions. There's also the reunion of separated families coming up on August 20th. 100 people from each side will participate in the reunion, and preparations are well underway to renovate the facilities at Mount Kumgang, where they'll be meeting. A lot of effort has also been made to diffuse military tensions on the peninsula. Just last year, things reached a boiling point because of the North's continued missile provocations. But the Blue House says South Koreans are now completely free from the fear of war, as the two sides have halted all hostile acts, restored military communication channels, and are working to establish a peace zone in the West Sea. And all this work is aimed at establishing permanent peace on the Korean peninsula, a key agenda of the Panmunjom Declaration. Seoul is working closely with relevant parties, including Washington, to formally declare an end to the Korean War by the end of the year. North Korea has also taken important steps to gain the United States' trust. Seoul's presidential office said South Korea will continue to support North Korea-U.S. relations to achieve peace and denuclearization, and added that the two Koreas are planning a third summit in Pyongyang in the fall. Park Ki-jun, Arirang News.
It's official. President Donald Trump did receive a letter from his North Korean counterpart, with this happening on the same week the regime returned home the remains of fallen American soldiers. Washington seems open to another summit with Pyongyang. Lee Seung-jae zooms in on the two leaders' cordial relationship.
The White House on Thursday confirmed that U.S. President Donald Trump received a letter from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un earlier this week. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders confirmed the news of the letter, adding that the ongoing correspondence between the two leaders is aimed at following up on their meeting in Singapore and advancing the commitments made in their joint statement back in June.
He did receive a letter. I believe he received it on August 1st. We have responded to Chairman Kim's letter. The president has, and that letter will be delivered shortly. Beyond that, I can't get into any further details. I can say that the letters addressed their commitment from their joint statement, and that was made at the Singapore summit, and they're going to continue working together towards complete and total denuclearization.
This comes as the U.S. leader mentioned the letter in a tweet earlier Thursday, thanking Kim for the, quote, nice letter. Trump also thanked the North Korean leader for sending home the remains of the American soldiers killed during the Korean War, and added that he looks forward to seeing him soon. Last Friday, coinciding with the anniversary of the signing of Armistice Agreement, North Korea returned the remains of 55 American soldiers. While it's hoped that the repatriation will build momentum toward North Korea's nuclear disarmament, many say the progress towards securing a firm commitment from Pyongyang has been slow. Meanwhile, the U.S. says it is open to discussions about a second meeting between Trump and Kim, although nothing has been planned yet. In a regular press briefing on Thursday, the White House press secretary said a second meeting has not been currently locked in or finalized, but added that the White House is open to that discussion. Sanders also reaffirmed the U.S.'s firm commitment on the UN sanctions on North Korea, while mentioning that Trump will not be satisfied until a complete denuclearization. Trump has previously said that he would be open to inviting Kim to Washington, while there's also talk of a possible meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in September. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
When night falls, some relief is provided during the summer season here in Korea. Unfortunately, that hasn't exactly been the case this year. According to our Choi Si-young, for the past 2 days, the heat wave made sure tropical conditions linger long after the sun sets.
Both of the past 2 nights in Seoul were the hottest on record. Defining night as between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m., the Korea Meteorological Administration says the low on Friday at 5 a.m. was 30.4 degrees Celsius. That's the hottest since records began 111 years ago in 1907. The night before it was 30.3 degrees. Seoul is forecast to continue having what scientists call tropical nights when temperatures stay above 25 all night long. When it stays above 30, it's a super tropical night. Seoul has now seen 13 tropical nights in a row, not counting last night and the night before, which were super tropical. The heat wave warning is likely to be in place for some time. Today's highest high was 39.6 degrees in Useong County in Gyeongsang-pukto Province, followed by Seoul at 37.9 degrees. The country also suffered from high levels of fine dust pollution. The weather agency warns that too long outdoors raises the risk of heat stroke and heat exhaustion, and advises people to stay indoors and stay hydrated. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
The nation's prime minister went out to provide some encouragement to the caretakers of those especially vulnerable to the heat. Over lunch at his Seoul office, Lee Na-kyun stressed the significance of the role of social workers in tending to elderly people living alone, the homeless, and the poor. He listened to them about the difficulties and problems they see on site due to the record-breaking heat wave. The session was organized to encourage social workers dedicated to protecting the health of vulnerable groups and improving social welfare. It follows Lee's visit to families on a livestock farm in Gyeonggi-do province on Tuesday. He was there to console them and to check on the situation on the ground. The PM vowed to continue monitoring and responding accordingly. Amid the entire country's under a heat wave warning and the worst heat continues in the country, the government has decided on Friday to upgrade the system of heat wave control headquarters, which was run solely by the Ministry of the Interior and Safety. The headquarters has decided to include all the related ministries such as Ministry of Health, Ministry of Trade, and the Ministry of Environment to tackle the unusually long heat that is scorching down nationwide. The government also instructed to prepare an emergency response manual system in advance to deal with the worst heat, which is likely to continue until mid-August. If you look at the South Korean map, Daegu stands out as one of the hottest places in the country. With the mercury spiking to disturbing levels, its residents are well prepared. They're even able to find the humor in the situation. Kan Young-woo was at the metropolitan city to check it out firsthand.
Some call it Daefrica, a reference to the Sahara-like temperatures seen this summer in South Korea's fourth largest city. Daegu saw its highest temperature this summer so far on July 27th at 39.2 degrees Celsius. This Friday sculpture here gives you a sense of how hot it gets in Daegu. So to deal with the extreme heat wave, the city has come up with a number of countermeasures. In 20 places around the city, officials have installed machines that spray cool mist. They're on from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., spraying mist for 25 minutes every half an hour. Daegu also has opened up its ice rink to the public so anyone can come and enjoy the cool air from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Another way the city is trying to help is by giving out free bottles of cold water at 22 places that get a lot of foot traffic. They're giving out about 8,500 bottles every day.
To get over this unprecedented heat wave, it's important to stay cool and drink water. So by giving out cold water for free, we think this will help people stay hydrated.
It's only the beginning of August, and it looks like this heat will last for a while, but the people of Daefrica are pulling together to stay cool. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News, Daegu.
President Moon is taking a break this week. Photos released by the top office show him spending time off with First Lady Kim Jong-suk at a military base near Daejeon. The couple were also spotted taking a trip to a national forest in that city. The photos show Moon apparently catching up on his reading. The South Korean leader is expected to return to work on Monday. Turning now to the nation's trade situation, the Bank of Korea's data shows for the month of June, we've recorded a healthy current account surplus. Not as big as a year earlier, though. Here's Kim Hye-sung with a breakdown of the numbers.
South Korea's current account surplus hit $7.4 billion in June to mark 76 straight months in the black. But the current account surplus for the first half of this year as a whole dropped nearly 17% on year to $29.6 billion, the lowest figure in 6 years.
The goods account surplus in the first half of this year shrank from last year's $56.9 billion to $55.7 billion, as the value of imports rose faster than exports because of higher oil prices.
Exports of goods in the first half of this year rose 8.8% on year on the back of semiconductors and machinery. But goods imports rose by a bigger margin of 11.5% on rising global oil prices, which went up by $16 a barrel compared to the first half of last year. The services account deficit hit $2.45 billion in June.
The deficit for services in June narrowed slightly on year, but for the first half of 2018, it grew mainly due to a bigger travel account deficit as the number of domestic departures outpaced the number of foreign arrivals.
The travel account deficit hit $8.5 billion, marking the second largest half-yearly loss following a record high tallied in the second half of 2017. The financial account, which shows capital outflows and inflows, saw a surplus of $4.7 billion in June and $24 billion for the first half of this year. Both are down from the same period last year as Korean companies increased their investment abroad and their dividend payments. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
And here are some numbers that provide a boost to Korea's financial stability. Foreign exchange reserves surpassed $402 billion in July, nearly $2.2 billion added from the month before, according to the BOK. The surge was largely due to weaker U.S. dollars, which in turn raised the value of the central bank's assets held in other currencies. Back in June, reserves surpassed the $400 billion mark for the first time. In the tech realm, Apple's stock prices closed at a record high. The iPhone maker became the first company in America to be worth more than $1 trillion. Oh Seong help us look beyond the digits.
Apple has become the first publicly traded firm to hit $1 trillion in market capitalization. Stock prices for the IT giant closed at an all-time high of $207.39 on Thursday, up nearly 3% from the day before. The recent surge in share price is largely attributed to the firm's stronger-than-expected quarterly earnings report. Apple shares have jumped more than 1,010% since the launch of the first iPhone 11 years ago, and have increased by more than 30% over the past year.
I've loved watching it go up and up and up, and it's not that it makes me feel rich, it just kind of makes me feel like, geez, I wonder if I could be one of those like 85-year-old ladies who says, I bought Apple stock when I was 25 years old and I still have it. And now I can put my grandchildren through college. I don't know.
According to CNBC, an investment worth $1,000 in August 2008 would now be worth $9,000, including price appreciation and excluding dividends. With its recent feat, Apple is streaked ahead of its Silicon Valley rivals Amazon and Microsoft, whose market caps stand at around $900 billion and $800 billion respectively. Oh Seong, Arirang News.
Just a few years ago, most Koreans were strangers to the likes of heroes and villains from Marvel and DC. Quickly things changed. Seoul is hosting Comic Con for the second time. Our Ko Ryuni got a chance to nerd out with tens of thousands of participants, delving into the latest trends in international comics, movies, animations, and games.
It's probably the only place in Seoul where you see Iron Man taking a photo with Spider-Man, or Deadpool goofing around with a video game character. The global pop culture event Comic Con Seoul 2018 kicked off on Friday for its second ever edition. It's a chance for fans to enjoy their favorite comics, movies, and games together. The event was organized by the same people who put together Comic Cons around the world, including the famous one held in New York City. Fans local and foreign had a great time hanging out in costume.
I really enjoyed The Dark Knight Rises starring Christian Bale, so I decided to cosplay as Batman. A lot of people were interested in my costume today.
It's really hot outside, so I feel like I found the perfect place to cosplay. Also, I'm happy to be here because this convention's about not only games, but comics too.
Visitors got to meet Hollywood celebrities like Michael Rooker, who played Yondu in the film Guardians of the Galaxy. They could even see artists drawing famous comic book characters right before their eyes. And these professional creators took the time to meet with their fans individually.
Creators are just right here in the room, and folks can come up and talk to us, and we get to talk to readers, and there's a kind of accessibility about that this kind of venue provides.
In addition to cosplay and performances, there were more than 300 booths offering fun things to do. Here at Comic Con Seoul 2018, there are plenty of hands-on activities. One of them is this interactive booth where university students apply zombie makeup to visitors. Comic Con Seoul 2018 runs until this Sunday. But if you miss it, Korea's next comic convention will be in Busan next February. Ko Ryuni, Arirang News.
Let's turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, the nation continues to burn up. Can I assume the weekend will look similar?
Well, Daniel, this heat wave have broke another record. Now, the whole mainland of the country is under a heat wave warning except for Jeju Island. Now, this is the first since 2008 when such warning was first introduced. Now, our Saturday afternoon won't be too different. So, scorching hot near 40 degrees Celsius, while the southern regions are about 3 to 4 degrees lower. And Seoul experienced 2 straight days of supertropical nights. Now this is when the mercury remains above 30 degrees until the morning. Now tonight you can't expect a tropical night since the morning low will be below 30 but above 25 degrees in Seoul. And the same goes for Gyeongju, starting the morning at 25 degrees. Saturday afternoon in Seoul will heat up to 37 degrees, while Daegu is burning hot at 39, and the nation will be under partially sunny skies again. Next week, it is officially beginning of autumn, according to the dates on the calendar, but that doesn't mean much in terms of the temperatures. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all from us. Thank you for watching. Have an incredible weekend.